Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. Unfortunately, I still have to do these in two parts. A lot of you guys know why at this point. That might be sorted as soon as next weekend. Same format, picked a few general questions, and we get into the little more personal questions, and then maybe PED and TRT related questions near the end for people who aren't interested in either one of those. And let's get this started. First question. Jason, the only back exercises that I actually like to do is pull-ups and deadlifts. I don't like rows. If I spend all of my time and energy into these two exercises for the back, would I reach maximum or even close to hypertrophy and strength in the back with just these two exercises with the absence of rows? My main concern is my trap and upper back development. I would throw in some face pulls and you would be good to go. For just overall development and strength, weighted pull-ups and deadlifts are going to be perfectly fine. If you're worried about the upper back and trap, face pulls will sort that, and getting strong enough on your deadlifts. Make sure you're getting enough workload on your deadlifts, and it should sort that out. It really shouldn't be an issue for you. Now, the one thing I will point out, rows and, again, vertical pulling is a basic strength function. If you're really weak there, that might be the reason you don't like it, because it feels awkward, you feel really weak. They might be worth doing for you just for overall strength balance, because that could be your weakness. That could be a weak link in performance. You don't want to have weak links in your performance. However, for just overall development, the deadlift and weighted pull-up done with enough frequency and volume and workload should be more than sufficient for overall back development. You'll be fine. You can reach your maximum potential just fine with those two. All right, next question. Hey, I know you have released an awesome beginner routine and off-season linear periodization routine, but what kind of program do you suggest people go on when on a cut, assuming they are no longer beginners and can't use the cutting version of your beginner routine? Thanks. What people need to consider is that the main thing that changes when you're cutting as far as your actual lifting goes is that your progression rates are going to be very, very different. And the problem there is that people want you to assign them programs. They don't understand the progression pattern is the most important element of any program. That's what determines whether a program is for a novice, an intermediate, or an advanced, is how you progress on the weights and the workloads throughout that. Not necessarily how much volume there is, how much frequency, exercise selection. Those things can remain constant through your entire training career, to be perfectly honest. You could go 10 years without training those things and still make pretty close to the best gains you'd ever make. It's all about progression patterns and periodization. The problem you run into with a caloric deficit is that the progression is what's going to change. The same basic routine that got you your size on a bulk or a clean bulk or a recomp will help you preserve it and your strength during a cut. But the problem is that how advanced you are makes a difference. For someone who is a novice, a lot of them can make 50% or more of the progress as far as the progression goes that they could have made if they were bulking. And that's something you need to consider. Novices can gain muscle and strength in a caloric deficit just at a slower rate. So they can absolutely recomposition the first 6 months. So they would just run a slightly slower progression pattern like my novice program does. And this is where the difference that you need to understand, where it's important to know if you're an intermediate versus an advanced lifter. Everyone wants to act like they're an advanced lifter, and they want programs for advanced lifters. And they need to realize being an advanced lifter sucks. It's not a bragging right. It's not, oh man, I'm an advanced lifter now. No, it means your routines are going to be hard. It means your progress is going to be slow. Here's the big difference. An intermediate doing a decent cut can actually hold on to their strength and their muscle mass if they just maintain their program. They should be able to hold on to their strength overall. And in some cases, they can gain little small amounts of strength, a little bit of progress. So they just need to scale back the progression, try to progress if they can on a cut, but don't be expected if they just hold in the middle ground. And if they're losing strength, their cut is too aggressive or their program isn't right. An advanced lifter is going to have to run a program that allows for them to scale back progression and even accept negative progression. When you're an advanced lifter and you start cutting body weight, you should expect your lifts to go down. You should expect to lose a little bit of muscle mass. Doesn't mean you can't regain it, but you're going to lose muscle and strength. So an advanced lifter on a cut who isn't going to up the dose on his drugs in some way is probably going to have to accept the fact that as he loses weight, the weight on the bar is going to go down. There's not a lot he can do about it. So for him, he might just have to accept those strength losses, increase the reps a little bit, reduce the weight, and try to burn a few more calories with the lifting and then regain what he has lost after he finishes the cut. So it's your progression rates that are most important, not necessarily your routine selection. If it got you big, it will keep you big when you're trying to cut, but you're going to need to just adjust the progression. All right, next question. How much less gains will I make running the cutting version of your programs in terms of the volume, the 3x5 and 2x8 compared to the 5x5? I'm trying to gain weight at the moment and I'm at a 5 to 10% surplus estimated. The thing is, all right, it's not how much less, it's a matter of what's going to give you the best results. What people don't understand, when you add volume to a program, you're just trying to maximize your hypertrophy as long as it's not at the expense of reducing frequency. Reducing frequency and adding volume will always reduce your gains unless you're on drugs. And even then, sometimes you got to be on a pretty hefty amount. It's always going to work better if you can increase frequency for a drug-free or very low dose drug user to keep frequency high. So the whole idea here is that if you can't handle the full 5x5 sets across and you're needing to cut back, and about 25% of the population can't adapt, and particularly some of the guys who get further into the program, they can't adapt anymore. So by reducing down to the 3x5 instead of the 5x5 and doing the cutting version, they're going to gain more muscle. They're not going to gain less, they're going to gain more because they're able to maintain their training frequency higher while still progressing on the strength. So they don't lose anything. For guys who can handle the 5x5 and recover and choose to do just the less volume, they still might gain the same amount of muscle, and in some cases they might only gain 5% less muscle. The whole idea of those extra sets is just to maximize the hypertrophy you're gaining, to gain a little more. It's not adding 20 or 30% more size here just because you've added 40% more volume. It doesn't work that way. Volume of training always scales on a diminished returns. Every extra set that you add doesn't give a proportionate amount of muscle gains in either size or strength versus the previous sets. It's little tiny amounts, and every set you add is an even tinier amount. So the 3x5 is more than sufficient to gain over 90% of your possible gains. You're just trying to squeeze out a little more. That's the whole point. But if it starts coming at the expense of progress and you're not able to recover from it fast enough to make progress consistently due to too much workload and volume with too high of a frequency, then the smaller volume will actually produce more gains. That's something that people need to keep in mind with this. And that's why this is a novice program. You're going to reach a threshold to where the workload of it is simply too much for you to recover from over time. But that's good because I've built people's work capacity so that they can really handle intermediate programs better. But yeah, doesn't work the way people always think it does. It's just doing less work, you're automatically going to gain less muscle. That's not necessarily true. And in some cases, it can be the exact opposite because, again, it's about balancing recovery. It's about balancing fatigue and recovery with frequency. All right, next question. Are upright rows an effective trap and delt builder after already doing deadlifts, overhead press, bench, and heavy rows? I do full body routines and enjoy the exercises, but I question their usefulness. If so, what is better, dumbbell or barbell? Upright rows are fantastic for putting mass on those. However, it is an exercise that is also a very, very high-risk exercise. Some people complain about me doing behind-the-neck presses. The way that I perform a behind-the-neck press is actually less dangerous than a standard upright row. Because again, when I was talking about crushing shearing stress on your glenoid or crushing stress on the glenoids before, when talking about side lateral raises in that video a couple weeks back, think about the position of your pinky on an upright row. You're back in that same position that puts stress directly on the joint, and it can actually crush the glenoids and cause impingements and bone damage as a result of doing upright rows. So you need to weigh out of, can you do them personally safely? Are they worth the risk? I can't answer that for you. That's something that you have to figure out for yourself. I generally shy away from them. It's always funny that the US dumbbells versus barbells. If you're going to do them only with barbells, and the reason is, I've always referred to and joked and called dumbbell upright rows penis crushers. I have seen a guy smack his cock between two of them before, and he wasn't permanently injured, but it hurt him pretty bad. So I call dumbbell upright rows penis smashers. You might want to avoid those if you have a penis. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm currently trying to decrease the size of my glutes, and they just respond so quickly, but still want to get a bit more quad development and get a bigger number on the back squat. I've decided on squatting 2 week, 1 front and 1 back squats, but triples of 80 to 95% for the back squats. Have you got any idea how I can go about this? Thanks, bro. Love your content. Well, since most of you guys seem to be lifting for girls, I don't know why you would want your glutes bigger. Plenty of scientific studies have said that the first muscle that women notice on a man isn't their biceps or chest, it's their ass. So building bigger glutes will help you get girls. Just like Chris Jones says, glutes for the sloots. That should be your most important muscle for attracting chicks. Just saying, guys, and actually doubly important for attracting dudes if you're gay. And for girls, same thing applies. Now, as far as that goes, you've done nothing in your routine that's going to not cause your glutes to grow. Squatting deep causes your glutes to grow. Back squats recruit your glutes to just the same amount as a front squat does. The reason front squats recruit different patterns is that they require you to stay upright more. They're a better core and thoracic erector exercise. They don't work your quads more than a back squat does. And the depth to which you go on them is what's going to determine how much glute activation you have. And guys who squat deep are going to have big glutes. Guys who don't squat deep are not going to have big glutes. But don't start squatting less. If your glutes are really a concern, and again, I don't get this, stop pulling from the floor. Pulling from the floor on deadlifts, and particularly deficit deadlifts, is what's going to put more meat on your glutes than anything else, and even Romanian deadlifts can. If you don't want your glutes to grow as much, just start doing rack pulls for your pulling, the high rack pulls above the knee. That'll reduce your glute development and slow it down more than anything else. It's your deadlifting and pulling from the floor that's probably causing the extra glute development you're worried about, along combining that with the squats.